Welcome to the TFA podcast, where we like to take apart and really examine football analysis.
Yep.
And today we're doing a deep dive into one of our recent scout reports. And the subject is Alejandro Garnacho, a winger at Manchester United.
A very exciting young player.
Yes, he is. And, our listeners were curious about his level right now.
Yeah.
How good is he, really? And also, where could he go from here? What's his potential trajectory?
Yeah, what does the future hold?
Yeah. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to break it all down for you. We'll look at his strengths, weakness.
Things he can improve.
Exactly. And even, where could he play in the future?
Right.
Based on what we've seen, different clubs, things like that.
And before we get into all that, just a quick note for everyone listening. You can find all the latest football analysis over at totalfootballanalysis.com.
Yes.
And that includes the full scout report that we are talking about today.
Yeah. So if you like what you hear, definitely head over there and check it out.
And just another reminder for our TFA subscribers, you can get 30% off your subscription by using the code TFAPOD at checkout.
Very good deal.
All right.
Okay, so our mission today is to really get under the skin of Garnacho's game.
Yeah.
Help you understand what the data tells us, what our analysis tells us.
Yeah.
Is the hype real? Is he as good as people say?
Right. Is he going to be a superstar?
Exactly. And we're going to examine the raw numbers, his playing style, and we'll give you our expert assessment of, where he might best develop going forward.
Garnacho, he really made a splash when he broke into the Man United first team. Back in the 2022-23 season, became a real impact player.
Yeah, he had that initial, impact and created a lot of excitement.
Way.
But, our analysis shows that his performances haven't always been consistent.
Right. He's up and down a little bit.
Yeah, there have been times where, his direct contributions, the goals, the assists, it's been lacking. And some of his decisions on the ball have been a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, that's fair to say, but you have to remember, he's still very young, 20 years old. It's rare to find a player that age who can perform at the top level week in, week out.
Right. Yeah.
Consistently.
Yeah, consistency is one of the hardest things to achieve,
For sure, especially at that age.
At that age, for sure.
Absolutely.
And there's been some talk about a potential move away from Man United, right?
Yeah, there have been some rumors.
Our report touches on the idea that the club might considered cashing in.
Right. Well, from a club perspective,
yeah.
They have to think about things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But our analysis really focuses on the fact that, despite these inconsistencies, Garnacho has some really strong fundamentals.
Yeah.
And those provide a platform, for him to really develop into something special.
Yeah, we even said in our report that if he builds on these foundations correctly,
he could be a Ballon d'Or contender someday.
That's a huge statement.
Yeah, but that's how much potential we see.
Yeah, so let's dig into those foundations a little bit. Our report includes radar chart analysis.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell us? What's the big picture?
Okay, so the radar chart, it really visualizes his strengths as an attacking winger, and it really highlights his threat in the final third.
Okay.
When you look at the data, some key metrics jump right out at you.
Okay, like what were the numbers that really stood out?
All right, well, his shots per 90 minutes puts him in the 92nd percentile.
Okay.
And then his touches in the opponent's penalty area per 90 minutes is even higher, 96th percentile.
Wow, so he's getting into dangerous positions.
All the time, yeah. He's a constant threat around the opponent's goal.
So statistically, he's in the right spots.
He's in the right spots.
What else did the numbers show us?
Okay, so his dribbles per 90 minutes are really impressive too, 86th percentile.
Okay.
So, he can take on defenders, he can progress the ball with his individual skill.
Yeah, and we'll talk about his dribbling in more detail later on, but the data definitely backs up the idea that he's dangerous when he's running with the ball.
Absolutely.
Okay, so he's getting into good shooting positions, he can beat his man, but what about his actual contribution to goals? What does the data say about that?
Okay, so his expected goal contribution per 90 minutes sits at a pretty solid 69th percentile.
Okay.
Which means he's a reliable attacking outlet, but there's definitely room for improvement.
So he's creating chances, but maybe the final execution needs some work.
Yeah, exactly. He needs to convert those chances into goals and assists more consistently.
Okay, that makes sense. What about his involvement in the build-up play, further away from the goal?
Right. Well, that's where we see a bit of a dip in the numbers.
Okay.
His progressive passes per 90 minutes are only at like 28th percentile, and dangerous passes are at 58th percentile.
So not bad, but not elite.
Not bad, but not elite. Yeah,
Yeah.
it suggests that he's not really a deep-lying playmaker.
Okay, interesting. So the data points to him being more of a direct goal-oriented threat
Right.
than, a creator through passing moves.
Right. More direct.
What about his contribution when the other team has the ball?
Okay.
Our report mentions his defensive work rate.
Yeah. And you know what's surprising is that for a player known for his attacking plays, he's actually got some really good defensive stats.
Oh, okay.
His defensive duels won puts him in the 94th percentile.
Oh, that's really high for a winger.
Really high.
Yeah.
Which means he's willing to work hard for the team even when they don't have the ball.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
A lot of young attacking players, they don't really focus on that side of the game.
Exactly.
But there is one area where he needs to improve aerially.
Yeah, his aerial duels won is only at like 22nd percentile.
Okay.
So definitely some room for improvement there.
Okay. So just to summarize the statistical overview,
Yeah.
we see a winger who is very effective at getting into scoring positions and taking on defenders. He's got a strong work ethic defensively, but there's room to grow in his finishing and his passing. And he's definitely got a weakness in the air.
Exactly.
So that gives us a pretty clear statistical profile.
Yeah, a good starting point.
Okay, so let's take a deeper look at some of his key attributes, starting with his dribbling barrack. Our analysis calls him an outstanding ball carrier, especially in tight spaces.
Oh, yeah. He's really good at that.
And we even compared him to Jack Grealish
Yeah.
in terms of his ability to hold on to the ball under pressure.
Great comparison.
But we also emphasized that Garnacho's defining quality is his confidence and willingness to just go at defenders one-on-one. He's not afraid to take people on.
He's fearless.
Yeah, which is exciting to watch, but doesn't always work out, does it?
Right.
Sometimes it leads to bad decisions.
Yeah, there are times when he loses the ball in dangerous areas, and that can put his team at risk.
Yeah, for example, we highlighted a moment in a game where he had a chance to drive at a defender, but it wasn't really on, and he ended up giving the ball away cheaply. A simple pass would have been the better option there.
Definitely.
And those are the kind of moments that can frustrate teammates and fans.
Yeah.
But we also made the point that even the best dribblers in the world, they lose the ball sometimes.
Of course.
We mentioned Messi,
It's part of the game.
It's part of the game, yeah.
It's the risk you take when you're trying to be creative.
Exactly. And the important thing is that he maintains that willingness to take risks to try to make things happen.
Absolutely. And when it works, it's really special.
Oh, yeah. Our analysis shows just how effective he can be. We said he's great at dropping his shoulder and sending his opponent the other way.
Yeah, he's got that quick change of direction.
Yeah, we even talked about a specific example where he completely spun an Aston Villa defender off balance.
Yeah, that was a great move.
Yeah, and we also called him an elite tight space dribbler.
Oh, yeah. He's amazing in tight areas.
He can navigate through those congested areas near the touchline or in the box with those quick little touches.
He's like a magician with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, and we even mentioned that one time where he got past two defenders in a tiny space near the sideline.
Yeah, that was incredible.
So that kind of close control and agility can be a real weapon.
For sure, it unlocks defenses.
But then our report comes back to that issue of what happens after the dribble.
Right. The decision-making.
The decision-making, yeah, what's the final action?
Yeah, end product.
Yeah, and that's the area where he needs to improve the most.
Absolutely.
Whether it's delivering a good cross or getting a shot on target, the execution after a successful dribble
Needs to be more consistent.
It needs work. Yeah, and we did mention that this is something that he's actively working on.
Yeah, he's aware of it.
So he's got the potential to be a game-changing dribbler with the skills to create chances, but that final pass or shot, needs to be more refined.
Yeah, to really maximize its impact.
Okay, so let's talk about his ball carrying ability in general, which is a little bit broader than just taking on individual players.
Right. So dribbling is more about beating your man in a one-on-one, but ball carrying is about moving the ball forward over longer distances.
Right.
And getting into dangerous areas.
And our analysis showed that Garnacho completed 27 carries into the penalty area in the Europa League this season.
Which was the most in the competition.
Yeah, that's a really impressive stat.
It is.
And it shows how important he is in transitioning the team from defense to attack.
Absolutely. He's vital in counterattacks and quick transitions.
And we brought up the comparison to Grealish again in this context of being a player who can carry the ball from deep and get his team into the final third.
Right.
So in these situations, it's not just about beating a man. It's about using his pace and his control to drive forward.
And create chances.
Yeah.
He can dictate the tempo of the attack, he can keep running at the goal, or he can pick out a pass when defenders collapse on him. And we even included a direct statistical comparison between Garnacho and Grealish in the report.
Okay.
And it shows some pretty striking similarities in their ball-carrying numbers.
Okay, so that comparison really highlights that ability to move the ball into dangerous areas.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about his goal-scoring ability. Our analysis shows that he consistently gets into good positions to shoot.
He does. He's always in the right spot.
But the main problem is that he tends to rush his shots.
Yeah, he doesn't always take his time.
Yeah, which affects his accuracy.
It does.
And we get some examples of this in the report.
Yeah.
We talked about a game where he had 2 great chances. One hit the crossbar.
Unlucky.
Yeah, but the other one, he took a heavy touch and then scuffed his shot wide.
Right, rushed it.
Yeah. And we pointed out that his finishing has been an area for improvement ever since he broke into the first team.
Yeah, it's something he needs to work on.
But if he can improve his finishing, he'll become a much bigger threat.
For sure.
The potential is definitely there.
Absolutely.
And we also notice a tendency he has when he shoots, he often cuts inside from the wing to get a more central shooting angle.
Right, and then he tries to curl it in.
Yeah, we compared it to Arjen Robben.
Yeah, classic Robben move.
Yeah, so again, the key is improving the precision and the execution of those shots.
If he can do that, he'll be very dangerous.
Okay, so he's getting into good positions. He's got the technical ability. But that composure in front of goal.
Needs work.
It needs work, yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, let's move on to his playmaking abilities. Our report actually explored the idea of him playing as a number 10.
Interesting.
Yeah, because he has shown some flashes of vision and creativity. Our analysis suggests that he can spot his teammates' runs.
Yeah.
And he understands when and where to release the ball.
He's got good awareness.
Yeah, but there is a but.
There's always a but.
His passing can be inconsistent.
Yeah. Sometimes the weight of his passes is off.
Yeah, sometimes they're underhit, sometimes they're overhit.
Right.
And that makes it difficult for his teammates.
It does.
But, again, he's only 20 years old. This is something they can improve with experience and coaching. However, our analysis also highlighted a very positive aspect of his playmaking.
Okay.
Which we called his la pausa.
La pausa.
Yeah, that little pause he takes on the ball before making a pass.
Right, that moment of composure.
Yeah, and we even gave an example where this pause led to a crucial assist.
So he's got that in his locker.
Yeah, so that ability to just hold the ball for a split second, to let a passing lane open up.
Or for a teammate to make a run.
Can be really effective.
Very effective.
But despite these glimpses of playmaking ability, our overall conclusion was that he should stick to the wing.
Yeah, I agree.
And the main reason for that is his dribbling, right?
That's his biggest strength.
That's where he can really express himself.
Absolutely.
And cause problems for the other team.
And from the wing, he can still contribute centrally with passes and crosses.
Right.
And he can make overlapping runs.
So he's got options.
He does.
But his core strengths are out wide.
For sure.
Okay, so we've talked about his strengths and his weaknesses. What about his future? Where could he play?
Right.
Our report considered some potential future clubs, if he does decide to leave Man United.
Yeah.
And our analysis suggests that he needs to be at a club where he's a regular starter.
Yeah, he needs to play week in, week out.
Yeah, and we ruled out Spain for now.
Yeah.
Because La Liga is full of top wingers.
So many good wingers in Spain.
It would be really tough for him to break into a top team there.
Yeah.
But we did mention Bayern Munich as a possibility.
Yeah, they've been looking to strengthen their attack.
And they're always looking for top young talent.
Exactly.
And then we looked at some options in Serie A.
Okay.
We talked about Inter Milan as a potential fit at left wing back.
Interesting.
Because of his defensive work rate.
Right.
Then there's Juventus, who need players who are good in possession, good at dribbling.
Yeah, that could be a good fit.
And Napoli have also shown interest.
I've heard that.
Yeah, they're looking to replace some attacking players.
Makes sense.
So those are all big clubs, with big ambitions.
Yeah.
But we also mentioned a smaller club.
Como.
1907.
Como.
Yeah, they're in Serie A, and they've got a project focused on developing young players.
Interesting.
So that could be a good place for him to get regular playing time.
Yeah, and gain experience.
Yeah, especially if they can stay up.
Right.
So to wrap up our deep dive into this report,
yeah.
What are the main conclusions?
All right, well, the report concludes that Garnacho is already an elite young talent.
Well, okay.
And he has the potential to be one of the faces of the next generation.
That's high praise.
It is, but we believe it.
And we also suggested that a move away from England could be good for his development.
Yeah, change of scenery could help him grow.
And we highlighted his strengths. Again, world-class dribbler in tight spaces, insane work ethic. And that opens up the possibility of him playing as a left wing back.
Right.
But ultimately, the key to his development is improving his finishing.
Absolutely.
If he can do that,
he'll score more goals, he'll get more assists.
And he can even be in the Ballon d'Or conversation someday.
It's all there for him.
So there you have it. Our in-depth analysis of Alejandro Garnacho based on our scout report.
Yeah.
Hopefully this breakdown has given you a clear understanding of his strengths, his weaknesses, and where his career might go from here.
Right.
It's always exciting to see a young player with so much potential.
Absolutely.
And to think about all the possibilities.
Yeah.
And if you want more in-depth analysis like this, scout reports, tactical breakdowns, all the latest football news,
head over to totalfootballanalysis.com.
Yes. And don't forget, our listeners can get 30% off their TFA subscription by using the code TFPOEOA at checkout.
Great deal.
Okay, so our analysis concluded that Garnacho's finishing will be the key to unlocking his potential. But what do you think, what other aspects of his game will be crucial, in determining his future success?
Yeah, what do you think, listeners?
Leave a comment. Let us know.
We want to hear from you.
Yeah, because these are the kinds of questions that make football analysis so interesting.
Absolutely.
And we hope this deep dive has given you something to think about.
Can talk about.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on the TFA podcast.
See you next time.